Hi everyone, my name is Kayla and welcome back to Kay's Hidden Shelf where we talk about books. Today I have a February wrap up for you. I am still playing catch up. I'm not even going to try and pretend that I'm going to catch up at this point, but I will remain steadfast in trying. Overall, February was a great reading month. I had one 4-star read, two 5-star reads, and one 2-star read, which we'll talk about a little bit. Between the 4 books that I read, there was also a mix of different genres, from fantasy, sci-fi, historical fiction, and a classic. The first one, we'll just dive right in, was The Souls Aspect by Mark Holloway. This is a self-published fantasy and book 1 of the Aspect series. This was a compelling start to the series that will pull at your heart. The story of a young boy named Kellum who discovers there's far more to his life and the history of his country than he previously thought. Kellum is a sickly boy who has devoted his life to learning the skills of a physician at his father's side. Living in a small town where the losses of the past war are still felt by the older generations, Kellum finally has a chance to move outside of his father's shadow. To do this, he must show his worth through a project of his own. He aims to gain an apprenticeship that will be the start of his own life. The Isail Academy calls, but not everything is as it seems. Now, what initially caught my attention with this was the tagline, "A healer turned killer." That, and I love physicians in fantasy settings. There are just a variety of different ways that they can be portrayed, alongside possible magic systems that create intriguing characters, and this was no exception. As Kellum is in his early teens, this is a coming-of-age story that gives readers an insight into how the healer became a killer, ultimately creating a captivating character arc in the first book. Speaking of characters, I did find the side cast was built quickly but effectively. What does this mean? Well, the characters we meet and the relationships that they built are fast-paced. However, it was done in a way that still gives depth to the characters and meaningful relationships. This made it easy to connect with them, leaving me with both lovable and detestable characters. Now, for the world building and magic system, they were both interesting and are explored alongside the characters' own experiences and learning. Now, there were aspects that were reminiscent of Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer. One such aspect was the magic school trope that is used in this. However, there are a variety of other aspects that were vastly different. Though it felt like we only scratched the surface in the world building, it feels like there are going to be lots of opportunities to continue to explore the world in the next books within the series. We also see LGBTQ representation, young love, found family, grimdark elements, tension between countries, and religious differences. There were wholesome moments in this and others that will just break your heart, not to mention the twists that pull you into this emotional story. This is a coming-of-age story that will only get bloodier from here, and I can't wait to see what will happen next. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. This is an accessible, self-published fantasy read, and I would highly recommend it for fans of Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer. Next, I read Butcher, Baker, Candlesticktaker by Patricia Meredith. This is book 1 in the Spokane Clock Tower Mysteries and is a self-published historical thriller. Now, I did receive a copy of this in exchange for an honest review. I found this to be a heart-stopping read that I couldn't put down. This is set in 1901, and this historical thriller will keep you on your toes down to the last page. The story is set in the quaint town of Spokane, where we meet Archie, a clockmaker who has been sent to the city to design the new clock tower. While lodging with Detective Carew and his twin brother, Archie quickly finds himself a suspect in the murder of his recent acquaintance, Miss Mitchell, who was a local patroness. As her grand home provides ample suspects, Archie works with Detective Carew to try and clear his name and the name of his new colleague. As this is a thriller and a murder mystery, I can't give a whole lot away in this review, so this will be shorter. However, Butcher, Baker, Candlesticktaker is the first book in what I am predicting to be a binge-worthy series. I flew through this in 2 days and felt compelled to keep reading. Patricia Meredith's writing is easy to get lost in while creating charming characters and an immersive story. The pacing was spot on, and seeing the story through multiple points of views of well-written characters was an absolute delight. Now, I read the physical book along with the audiobook, doing an immersion read, and I have to say that the narrator, Rebecca Cook, did a fantastic job at bringing this story to life and giving such an incredible voice to these characters. As this is a mystery best experienced by reading it, I'm going to leave this review short. However, I highly recommend this for anyone who is looking to get swept away to 1901 for the next immersive read. Overall, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I can already tell that this is going to be even better on a reread. I am so excited to see what else Patricia has in store and to see if this is going to be just as binge-worthy as I am anticipating. Next, I read The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is a classic novella and is a book that has been sitting on my to-read bucket list for quite some time. I also ended up reading this as a buddy read with Patricia Meredith, Tori from Tori Talks, and Evie from She Was Only Evie. I'll leave links to all their channels down below, and we had a full spoiler discussion about this novella, so I will leave that episode in the description or up in the cards if you're interested in watching that, where we have our classics cage match to discuss it. Now, I'm going to try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but this has been in entertainment for a long time, so I'm going to assume you know the storyline, or at least the big reveal at the end. Unfortunately, this was an underwhelming read for me. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde does have an intriguing storyline. However, as a plot-driven story, it fell short for me. I found myself wanting to see this from a character-driven narrative. The potential there kept nagging at me and left me wanting more. I do understand that at the time that this book or novella was released, that it was about a shock factor. It was about something that was outside of the culture then, where everyone in society was prim, proper, and polite, and there was a lot of social etiquettes to be followed, and the circumstances of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde often seemed to be the portrayal of evil in humanity from that perspective. For me, and aging to modern day, I just don't feel like it aged very well. It is definitely a compelling look at the moralities of humans. However, I feel like it could have been better explored within this novella. It felt like a shallow look into the morality of man. I feel like there are so many different ways that this could have been explored in a much more intriguing and thought-provoking way. As this relies a lot on shock factor and the plot-driven narrative, it just did not meet the expectations that I had going in. There were plenty of opportunities that I found were missed. And this is where the line between plot-driven and character-driven narrative comes into play, because there were so many opportunities where we could have gotten intriguing looks into the mentality of these characters, their psychology, anything from that perspective. And unfortunately, we don't really get that until the very end, and it's quite brief. I found that little snippet at the end is more of what I was craving. It is a quick read with some interesting ideas. I would love to see what authors can do with this tale in different ways, in modern perspectives. Overall, I give it 2 stars. It was a quick read, a good palate cleanser, and it was nice to knock off the TBR. The last book I read was Blood Reunion by JCM Berne. This is turn 3 in the Hybrid Helix series, and the cover did not let me down. I am so excited to talk about this. Blood Reunion does not skip a beat, balancing great action, storytelling, and incredible character development. This is a self-published superhero space opera and marks another great read in the series. The story for this one is that a killer is roaming Wistful, leaving corpses behind, drained of all their blood. All signs point to vampires, except they shouldn't be able to sneak around Wistful undetected. When Wistful becomes uncooperative, Rohan and Wei Li are left to protect the inhabitants of the station themselves. As danger looms, millions of lives are on the line, and Rohan is forced to fight in order to protect those he loves. It was great to be back with Rohan and the gang. After spending some time on Earth in Return of the Griffin, it was nice to come back to Wistful and spend more time with many of the characters that I've come to love. Being thrown right into the action and mystery made it really easy to fall into the pages. JCM Berne also doesn't waste any time pulling readers in with suspense that builds from the first chapter. Despite how much we have explored Rohan's character, he still receives great development in this, further building on the superhero we've come to love, where the situations and choices he must make demonstrates how human Rohan is. He is complex and continually strives for self-improvement, regardless of how others see him. As Rohan navigates old and new adversities, he is not alone in these struggles, as many of the side cast are right there alongside him. In getting more time with the side cast, we get to know them better, and it adds a great balance to the story. The world building continues to grow as we get a deeper look into a long-forgotten history. This is where the foreshadowing of the previous books begin to pay off, while still building for the next books in the series. So far, the pacing of Blood Reunion has felt the best out of the three. From pivotal moments, intrigue, character development, to mystery, it all felt perfectly timed. Now, at this point, I typically would give a brief synopsis of everything or anything you might find in the book that I'm talking about. And I always feel like the ones that I do for the Hybrid Helix series will probably sound a bit wacky, but I am telling you, it works and it is done so well. There are great fight scenes with hand-to-hand combat, vampires, space bears, political tensions, family issues, and epic space battles. For me, Blood Reunion takes everything that made Wistful Ascending and Return of the Griffin great and packing it into this stellar installment within the series. Overall, I give this 5 stars. I've had a fantastic time with this series, and I highly recommend it for anyone looking for a superhero space opera, sci-fi, and maybe just something different. This is a series that, yes, it is different. It sounds a little wacky when you put all the different elements of vampires, superheroes, space bears, and sentient space stations all together, but I promise you it works, and the author does a great job at bringing it all together. And that's everything I read in February. Overall, I had a fantastic reading month, and I would love to know, what did you read in February? Did you find a new favorite? Maybe one that wasn't quite what you were expecting? Leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thank you for watching, and take care of yourselves.